Hi everyone. We'll wait for another 2-3 minutes and we'll start. Hello, am I audible? Could you someone please confirm in the chat box whether I'm audible or not? Yeah, perfect. All right. So we'll be starting the session in next 1 minute. We are waiting. There were some people waiting for to join. Chitresh sir, am I audible to you?
Yeah, it's perfectly fine.
Perfect. All right. Chitresh sir, shall we start?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can see if there are enough participants, so we can start, or otherwise we can wait for another 2 minutes.
Yeah. Uh, People are joining actually. Like I'll.
So let's wait for 2 minutes, 2 more
Yeah,
minutes.
definitely, definitely.
Abdullah, we may start now.
Yes, we can start now. Very warm welcome to another episode of TaxCan's webinar series. Today we have CA Chitresh Gupta sir with us. He's a well-known person in the field of indirect taxation, especially GST. Everyone might know him. He's a senior partner in Mr. Chitresh Gupta and associate, a leading peer-reviewed firm in Delhi. In his over 20 years of professional career, he has been involved in various facets of indirect taxation. He is on the panel of consultant for various companies. His clients include various multinationals, including limited companies. He has been intensively associated with taxation matters, including representation at various authorities. He's a member of Indirect Taxation Committee of PhD Chamber of Commerce. He's also impaneled as a GST faculty at ICI, and he has authored many books, including one of the book which is hot selling in shopscan.in also, that is GST law analysis and procedures. I would like to mention a few words about that particular book also in before we starting. GST law analysis and procedure is one of the most updated commentary on GST, and it provides its readers a detailed analysis on all legal provisions of GST, along with business case studies and relevant case laws and illustrative diagrams. Book is available on shopscan.in. I'll put the link of book in the chat box. Also, we'll be providing, there is a 20% discount already in the book on shopscan.in. We'll be providing additional 10% discount to webinar participant, which is effectively 30% discount for the book. I'll be providing the link of the book as well as coupon code for webinar participant in the chat box. You can, if you are interested, you can just go through the link and you can purchase it. Now today we are discussing a very important point. I'm inviting Chitresh Gupta ji to take over the session. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Abdullah, for the nice introduction of mine, and very good evening to all of you. And it's good. I am seeing the large number of participants are joining, and we have already reached 200 participants now. And actually, the topic which he has selected is the reply to the show-cause notices with practical case studies and the suggestions. This is the hot topic nowadays, because now the GST law is almost 5 years old now, and now we are getting a lot of notices from the department, whether it is under section 73, 74 or ASMT 10 or some other section also, and lot of other departmental audits are also going on. So this is the topic which is very important and hot as of now. So friends, I'll be discussing the topic with reference to the practical aspects, and if you have any question, you can just type in the question and Q&A Q&A or chat box, or maybe after the session we can take up the question answer. So I'm just sharing my screen. Abdullah, my screen is visible to you?
Yes, perfectly fine.
Okay. So the brief plan of the presentation will be like this. We'll be starting the presentation right away, and at the end, for the approx 15 minutes, I'll be taking the question answer session, and my presentation I'll try to end by 5:45, and for next 15 minutes we'll have the question answer session. So in this presentation, I'll be discussing the SCN, show-cause notice, the legal provisions along with the judicial precedent. Then I'll be discussing the practical suggestions on how to reply to SCN. Then I'll be discussing the business case studies. So let us first start with the SCN legal provisions and judicial precedent. So, sir, if we talk about the show cause notice, the term show cause notice has not been defined under the GST law. But as per the common parlance and as per the principle of natural justice, before raising any tax demand, a notice has to be served by the department asking the person chargeable with tax to show cause as to why the amount specified should not be demanded from. The issuance of show cause notice grants an opportunity to such person to defend himself before adjudication, because unless and until the department issues to the taxpayer the show cause notice, he is not in a position to defend. So unless once he has a show cause notice, he can reply to that show cause notice and appear before the adjudicating authority personally and put forward his case. And of only after getting through these submissions and the personal hearing of the concerned person, speaking order can be passed by the adjudicating authority. So first of all, let us discuss the few essentials of the show cause notice. First is show cause notice cannot be vague. As in the previous slide, we studied that if the department want to raise any demand, in that case, the department has to give you the show cause notice. And without giving you the show cause notice, the department cannot raise any demand on you. So that show cause notice cannot be vague. It has to be clear. So there are various judgments which has been pronounced by various courts under different laws, wherein it has been held that the show cause notice cannot be vague and it has to be clear. So one of the very landmark judgment in this is Brindavan Beverages Private Limited. In this judgment, the Honorable Supreme Court observed that the show cause notice is the foundation on which the department has to build up his case. If the allegation in the show cause notice are not specific and are on the contrary vague, lacks details and are unintelligible, that is sufficient to hold that the noticee was not given proper opportunity to meet the allegation indicated in the show cause notice. So friend, it is very clear that if it is a vague show cause notice, then that vague show cause notice is not sustainable in the eyes of law. So similar view has been taken in various other cases also, like Mehta Pharmaceuticals versus CC, then Bhikalal Dwarka Das, etc. Then, sir, the show cause notice to mention clear allegation, like we have seen in the previous slide, it cannot be vague. The allegation which are made out in the show cause notice has to be very clear. And if the allegations are not clear, then that show cause notice cannot sustain in the eyes of law. So we have a case of Nakas Service Private Limited of the Honorable Jharkhand High Court, wherein the Honorable High Court held that in the absence of clear charges, which the person so alleged is required to answer, the noticee is bound to be denied proper opportunity to defend itself. This would entail violation of principle of natural justice, which is well recognized exception for the invocation of res judiction despite availability of alternate remedy. Meaning thereby, if the allegations are not clear, in that case, the noticee is not able to properly defend because he is not aware of the proper allegation. So when he is not aware of the allegation, so how the department can expect from the noticee to reply to the notice? So that notice will be invalid. So if I take, for example, generally nowadays we are receiving a lot of notices for cancellation of registration for improper reason. So I am sharing one of the practical notice which I have received in one of my client's case. And the reason mentioned in the SCN is non-compliance of any specified provision in the GST Act or the rules made thereunder as may be prescribed. So sir, here it can be seen, it is this is a show cause notice which does not contain any specific reason. It just says the non-compliance of a specified provision. So what are the specified provisions? There are so many provisions, clauses which are specified in section 29 of the CGST Act for cancellation of registration. Then in rules also there are certain clauses which are given. So, it is not mentioned that which provision of the CGST Act or rules has been contravened by the taxpayer. And further it says, as may be prescribed. So it is a vague show cause notice and it does not contain the specific allegation which provision of the act or rules has not been complied by the taxpayer. So in my view, this is a vague notice and it cannot be sustainable in the eyes of law. And we can contest this notice and we say just first provide the specific reasons why we have not, which provision of the law we have not complied, so that we can reply to this notice properly. Now, another example, if you see in the notice for cancellation or registration for improper reason, in some cases, I have seen the reason that taxpayer collect any amount as representing the tax, but fails to pay the same to the account of the central or state government beyond a period of 3 months from the date on which such payment become due. But if I see the conduct of that client, that client is not having any outward tax liability and that client is filing nil returns. So how department come to know that the taxpayer has collected the amount representing tax and that person has not paid the tax? And in the notice, they have also specified the liability as 0 and nil. So I don't know how the department can issue these kind of vague notices and which are not clear and they cannot contain the specific allegation. In my view, all these kind of notices are not sustainable in the eyes of law and they are just void ab initio. The another is court reluctant to interfere with the SCN unless issued apparently without any authority of law. There may be a case that you as a taxpayer receive some SCN from the department and you are of the view that since a specific reason has not been given or so there is some other issue in the notice, let's file a writ petition to the High Court and get the show cause notice quest. So whether it is possible for you to challenge the show cause notice directly to the High Court or Supreme Court without any adjudication being done against that show cause notice, that is the question. So sir, generally the High Courts are reluctant to interfere with the SCN and when the alternate remedy is available to the taxpayer because he can always reply to the show cause notice and can get the show cause notice adjudicated and go and file the appeal with the first appellate authority and so on. The process is available in the law. So generally court does not interfere with the SCN, but there are some exceptions to this rule. The first is violation of principle of natural justice. If the principle of natural justice has been violated in that show cause notice, in that case, that show cause notice can be directly challenged into the High Court. Then another is ultra vires the GST law. If the show cause notice ultra vires the GST law, then it can be directly challenged into the High Court. And if it lacks jurisdiction, सपोज आपका जुडिक्शन जो है किसी सेंट्रल अथॉरिटी से था और आपको स्टेट अथॉरिटी का नोटिस आ गया, देन इट कैन बी चैलेंज इन द हाई कोर्ट with respect to the jurisdiction. So these are the cases wherein it has been held that apart from the above 3 cases, the High Court is not bound to accept the writ in respect of the SCN. Then another is validity of SCN issued by an officer in excess of monetary limit. So sir, we have already aware in the law, generally the monetary limits are given for the administrative convenience of the officers, beyond which that particular officer cannot issue the show cause notice. Now the question arises, if the show cause notice has been issued by that particular officer in beyond the limit, beyond the monetary limit which has been prescribed for him to issue the show cause notice, in that case, whether that show cause notice will become invalid or whether it will remain valid and it can be adjudicated by that particular officer. So sir, in that case, we have a Supreme Court judgment, Pahwa Chemicals Private Limited, which dealt with the same issue. And in this case, the Honorable Supreme Court held that the administrative directions cannot take away jurisdiction vested in the central excise officer under the act. At the highest, all that can be said is central tax officers, as a matter of propriety, must follow the directions and only deal with the work which has been allotted to them by virtue of these circular. But if an officer still issues a notice or adjudicates contrary to the circular, it would not be ground for holding that he has no jurisdiction to issue the show cause notice or to set aside the adjudication. Meaning thereby, even if the officer issues the SCN, which is beyond the monetary limit which has been given in the administrative direction, in that case also, if the officer proceeds with the same show cause notice and do the adjudication, in that case the show cause notice and adjudication will be valid. But definitely you can raise the issue of monetary limit in the reply to the show cause notice. So similar view has been taken in many other cases: Eon Construction Products Private Limited, Palak Designers Diamond Jewelry, etc. Then the question arises: mere letter or communication asking for payment is not an SCN. Meaning thereby, suppose you have received some letter or communication, or maybe you can say there is a technological advancement. You receive some email from the department. So whether that letter or communication or email will be regarded as SCN? Sir, no, that should not be regarded as SCN. SCN should be termed as show cause notice, and no other communication from the department will be treated as SCN. So, sir, in the case of CC versus Merchant Impacts, the Honorable Karnataka High Court observed that issue of show cause notice is a mandatory requirement for raising demand, and that communication, order, suggestion, advices from the department cannot be deemed to be show cause notice, held that the letter issued by the department cannot be treated as show cause notice, and therefore entire proceeding is vitiated. So similar view has been taken in many other cases like Steel Ingots versus Union of India, Madhya Pradesh High Court, Sidwell Refrigeration, Delhi Tribunal, then Metal Forging by Honorable Supreme Court. So if department want to raise any demand, so it is very clear that the department has to issue the show cause notice, and mere letter or communication cannot be sufficient for raising the demand from the taxpayer. Now the another question which arises, whether recovery of interest can be made without issuing show cause notice, like the taxpayer is liable to pay interest for delayed payment of tax under GST under section 50. Now in one of the case, the question has arisen before the Honorable High Court that whether recovery of interest can be made from the taxpayer without resorting to issuance of SCN. So in the case of LC Infra Projects Private Limited, the Karnataka High Court observed and held that the issuance of show cause notice is a sine qua non to proceed with the recovery of interest payable under section 50 and the penalty leviable under the provision of the act or rules. तो सर यहाँ पर हाई कोर्ट ने कह दिया कि भाई जो है the show cause notice has to be mandatorily issued even if you want to recover the interest under section 50. And the court held that undisputedly the interest payable under section 50 has been determined by the authority without issuing show cause notice. So in this case, what has happened? The interest has been determined by the authority without issuing the show cause notice, which is in the breach of principle of natural justice. It is settled principle of law that any order passed by the quasi-judicial authorities in contravention of the principle of natural justice cannot be sustained. Thus, it is apparent that action of the third respondent is perverse and illegal, and the same deserve to be set aside. The another is show cause notice must be in writing. Many times we receive lot of calls from the department, and they intimate us of the some of the discrepancy and other issues in the document filed by us or in the written filed by us. But whether that phone call from the department can be considered as show cause notice, sir, no. It is not a show cause notice. Show cause notice has to be in writing. So, sir, in the case of Voltas Limited, uh, it has been held in the absence of a notice in writing proposing the classification of goods under heading determined by Assistant Commissioner and confirmed by collector appeals, the principle of natural justice had not been applied. On that ground, we allow appeal and set aside the impugned order. So, meaning thereby, the show cause notice cannot be oral and it has to be in writing. Now, let us come to the second topic, practical suggestion on how to reply to SCN. Now I'll be discussing the some of the pointers to reply to show cause notice. First of all, acknowledging the receipt of SCN. What happens? Sometimes we receive the notice, and when we receive the notice, we just open the notice and read it and keep it. So we are, and at a later date, when we see when we have received it and what is the time, we don't have any document to substantiate that. So, sir, when we receive the SCN, it is very important. We should keep the envelope safely and put the date and the time when we have received it. Because at many places in the law, the word service has been used, meaning thereby limitation has to be counted from the date of service of notice. And this point may not be relevant in cases wherein the notice has been served on the electronic portal, because in that case, the date of uploading on the electronic portal will be the date of receipt of SCN or service of SCN. The another is sometimes what happens, we want to avoid the receipt of SCN and thinking if we avoid the receipt of SCN, then there will be no demand. So friends, in my view, there is no point in avoiding the SCN avoiding the receipt of SCN. It has to be received and then contested and replied. Non-receipt is sometimes considered as a service. The another point can be contemplating any SCN and feel that GST has to be paid, meaning thereby suppose there is a department or audit which was going on in your factory and lot of queries has been raised by the departmental officers, and you at the time of departmental audit you feel that yes, there is a mistake on the part of the company and you have wrongly availed the input tax credit and that needs to be paid, and you are convinced that there is a liability under the GST law. So it is better you pay the liability before issuance of SCN. SCN cannot be issued for the amount already paid, and more so if you see section 73 and 74, if you pay the demand before the issuance of notice, in that case, in case of section 73, there is no penalty, and in case of section 74, there is a reduced penalty of 15%. So you can take the benefit of reduced penalty also. Then the preliminary objections to be raised first with justification. Once you receive the notice, show cause notice, then first of all you have to check that the show cause notice has been issued by the proper judicial officer. If your judicial officer is center, then it has to be issued by central officer. If it is state, then it has to be issued by the state, and more so that has to be issued by the proper officer, because if you see in the GST law at many places the term proper officer has been used. Like if I take the example of section 73 or section 74, it is start with where it appears to proper officer that any tax has been short paid, not paid, etc., etc. The proper officer shall serve the notice. So who is proper officer? The proper officer has been defined by CBIC White Circular number 3/3/2017, dated 5th July 2017, and circular number 31 05/2018 GST dated 9th February 2018. So we have to take the definition of proper officer, who are the proper officer authorized for that particular section, and it has to be issued by that proper officer only. Then the another thing we need to see immediately on receipt of notice is that whether it is within the time limit prescribed under the law or it is time barred. Like under many sections, the time limit has been prescribed for issuance of show cause notice. If I take example of section 73, then notice to be issued within 2 years and 9 months from the due date of filing annual return. Or in case of section 74, which deals with fraud cases, the notice to be issued within 4 years and 6 months from the due date of filing annual return. If the notice has been issued after this time, then definitely that notice is not valid, and we can take this ground of time barred ground in the reply, which will be filing to the concerned authority. Then another is invoking extended period of limitation. So, sir, I have seen in many show cause notices, generally the department invoke the extended period of limitation in almost every case, and they make that case of suppression, fraud, or willful misstatement. So, sir, if there is a case of suppression which has been made by the department against you, then it is your duty to prove that there is no suppression on the on your part, so that extended period cannot be invoked. So it is very much essential that your reply should cover that why there is no suppression on your part, so that the department cannot invoke the extended period of limitation. So, sir, what happens generally when we receive the notice after checking the jurisdiction, then time bar, then the extended period? We have to read the notice very thoroughly. I have seen in many times we do not read that notice thoroughly and we do not reply to the every point, which creates a problem at a later point of time. So you have to read the notice thoroughly, and if you have not understood any point mentioned in the notice, please read it again and again till you understand. Notice to be issued in the correct name and the proper section and sufficient time is given. Up suppose I have two firms. One is a proprietorship firm and second is the private limited company. If the department want to issue the notice to the private limited company, in that case, the department cannot mention my name and give the particulars of the private limited company. So it has to be addressed to the proper person. Then the procedure as prescribed in the rules must be followed. Otherwise, the legality of the notice can be in jeopardy. So if some procedure has been prescribed in the rules, that has to be followed. Like in many cases, in rules, at many places, it has been mentioned that the notice has to be served electronically. If it has to be served electronically, then service by any other mode will not be a valid service. So it has to be served electronically only. And if some specific format has been prescribed, so definitely that the reply has to be given in the specified format, or the notice has to be in a specified format. Then the very important point is relied upon document. Many times when we receive the show cause notice, the department mentioned in the show cause notice that they have relied upon so and so documents, and these relied upon documents are very important, and the SCN must be served with all these relied upon documents. So it is your legal right to have the relied upon documents along with the show cause notice. Reason being, if you don't have the relied upon document with the show cause notice, in that case you are not able to see what is there in the relied upon document, and you are not able to properly defend your case. And if the relied upon documents are not there with the show cause notice, in that case you can very well within your right ask for the relied upon document by writing a letter to the department. Since relied upon document as mentioned in the show cause notice has not been attached, you are requested to provide the copy of the relied upon document. the department is duty bound to provide you the light upon document. And one more very important thing is that the notice is deemed to be served on the date when such RUDs are provided, and because of such delays some period may get time barred. तो जो आपका जो डेट ऑफ सर्विस ऑफ नोटिस है वो तभी मानी जाएगी when you have received the light upon documents, not when you receive the notice. The another is light upon document to be supplied, opportunity to inspect not sufficient. Suppose you receive the show cause notice, and in that show cause notice, the department has mentioned that they have light upon various documents which are mentioned in the show cause notice. And instead of supplying the copies of the light upon document, the department has just mentioned in the show cause notice that you can inspect the light upon document at the office of the judicial officer at so and so address. So whether that inspection is valid is correct for the validity of the show cause notice. So sir, no, there are various judgments where it has been held that the opportunity to inspect is not sufficient. They have to provide you the copy of the light upon document. So there is a case of Centogen silk mills wherein it has been held and observed that in the annexure to show cause notice, a list of 17 documents light upon have been shown. Said annexure shows that only copies of the light upon document from serial number 2 to 6 were supplied to the appellant with the direction to them to inspect the balance document as reflecting against serial number 7 to 16, meaning thereby in this show cause notice what department has done, they have supplied the light upon document from serial number 2 to 6, but as regard the light upon document serial number 6 to 7 to 16, they have written that you can inspect these documents. The appellant while their letter made a prayer for supply of all the documents relied upon in the show cause notice. Though the said letters were received by the revenue, there was no response on the same, and the impugned order has been passed by the commissioner without considering the above request of the appellants. The learned advocate appearing for the appellant submit that the revenue was duty bound to provide the copies of the light upon document, and the failure on their part to do so, in spite of a request made by the appellant to that effect, has resulted in violation of principle of natural justice. So it has been held that the tribunal set aside the impugned order and remanded the matter back to the commissioner. And it further held that the appellant would be supplied with the copies of the document relied upon in the show cause notice and would be allowed an effective opportunity of hearing. So meaning thereby the opportunity to inspect is not sufficient. The department is duty bound to provide you the copies of the relied upon document. The similar view has been held in many other cases, and one of the case which I have mentioned in PGO Processor Private Limited versus CCE. It is of High Court of Rajasthan. Then it is also so that in one of the case, what happens that the department has provided the relied upon document with the show cause notice, but that relied upon documents were not legible and not readable. Now the question arises whether that those relied upon document which the department has supplied which are not readable will be a valid compliance of the law. So in the case of Jayanti Lal A. Shah versus CCE Mumbai, it has been held that the relied upon document should be legible and readable. If the department provides a document which are not readable and not legible, in that case, it cannot be the valid compliance of the law. Then the another is when you receive a show cause notice, this show cause notice shall give you a proper opportunity of being heard. So if it does not give you a proper opportunity of being heard, and they have already taken the decision and they said that so much amount is payable by you and the amount has already been determined, and they say we come to the conclusion that so much demand is payable by you and you are requested to pay the demand by so and so date. So, sir, it is not a show cause notice because the department has already framed its mind and they have given you the demand notice. In case of show cause notice, the department alleges it, so why so much tax should not be demanded from you. They cannot come to the conclusion and then they serve the show cause notice. So basically, show cause notice is the starting of adjudication process. So they allege why not this much tax should be recovered from you. So you have to be given the opportunity of being heard and to put forward your case, and it cannot be denied by the revenue. Then computation of demand. At times, I have seen in many notices the demand has not been quantified. So this is again a very important point, that the demand should be quantified in the notice itself. This can be, if it is not quantified, then you can request the concerned authority to provide you the computation of demand, and so that you can prepare the reply effectively. The another is department to adjudicate only on the issue mentioned in the SCN. So friend, this is very, very important issue, that the department can only adjudicate on the issues which they have mentioned in the SCN. Suppose they have issued the SCN containing the 2 issues. Now the third issue also comes up, and the department want to adjudicate on the third issue also. No, sir, the department cannot adjudicate on the third issue because that issue has not been contained in the SCN, and it is not a matter of SCN. So it is very important that we have to see if we have received the show cause notice on 4 points, then department only concentrate on the 4 point and adjudicate on the 4 points only. Then format to reply. If form is prescribed for reply, like under GST, we see there are a lot of forms which has been prescribed. So if some form is prescribed for the filing the reply, then we should be filing the reply in that particular form. If no form is prescribed for filing the reply, then we can file the reply in our own format. So generally, it is suggested to give the point-wise reply, because otherwise, if the show cause notice contains lot of issues, then there will be confusion in the show cause in the reply, and it will be difficult for the authorities to understand. So there has to be a point-wise reply, and try to provide reply or explanation to all points covered in the SCN. So each and every point which has been given and alleged in the show cause notice shall be replied, and wherever necessary, substantiate the reply with the documentary evidences. Detailed reply may be submitted along with earlier decided case laws. If you are relying on the certain case laws, so definitely you can mention the para number of those cases, and along with that relevant para can be reproduced, and you can also submit the copies of the judgment along with the reply. A list of evidences on which you are relying must also be submitted. Reply within the stipulated time. Generally, when you receive the show cause notice, there is a certain time period within which it is to be replied. Generally, it is of 30 days. Then it has to be replied within that stipulated time period. So department is duty bound to give you the reasonable period of time for reply to the show cause notice. It is not that the department has issued the show cause notice today and they ask you to reply by tomorrow. So it is not a valid show cause notice. So the department has to give you a reasonable time to reply. And in case you are not able to reply to the show cause notice by the stipulated time, then you can take the adjournment by filing an adjournment letter to the jurisdictional authority, and which is normally granted by the authority. Then submission of reply. Now you have prepared the reply. Now the next question arises how to submit it with the department. First is verify the document before submission to the department, and if possible, approval of consultant may be taken. Suppose sometimes if you are a company and you have prepared a reply and along with the various evidences and document, so it's better if you get it vetted from the consultant so that you can have the second opinion. Second is office copy must be kept in record, which must be replica of whatever submitted to the department. It is very important because I have seen in many cases we are in hurry to submit the reply to the department and we just submit the one copy to the department of the reply, and we don't keep the replica copy in our records. So when the actual date of hearing of the case comes, then we are actually not aware of what document we are submitted to the department, and these documents are required to be referred at future date also in case the case goes at the next level of litigation. Then the third is the reply may be submitted in person before the authority and get the acknowledgement from them, or may be sent by registered post or speed post. So yeah, a reply you can submit in person and by speed post, and if any other method has been prescribed under the law, like electronic, it may be uploaded electronically, so you can upload electronically also. If it is sent by registered or speed post, it is better to take the delivery report by tracking the same in the post office website. Or if it is uploaded on a portal, then note down the acknowledgement number. Proper reply forms a foundation for future litigation. So proper reply is very important, because if you are not able to get the favorable order at the adjudication stage, so maybe your case will travel to the next level, first appellate level, then tribunal. So tribunal has not been formed till date, but definitely to the high court and other level. So in that case, the reply becomes submitted at the adjudication stage becomes very important. And if you are not in a position to represent your case personally, and if you are not able to defend it properly, then it is better to hire a professional to assist you in drafting a reply to SCN and represent your case at the adjudication stage. Now, the next is notice not to be invalid if already acted upon. So, sir, we have sections 160 subsection 2, which says that the service of any notice, order, or communication shall not be called in question if the notice, order, communication as may be has already been acted upon by the person to whom it is issued, or where such service has not been called in question at or in earlier proceeding commenced, continued, finalized pursuant to such notice, order, or communication. So, sir, this is very important section, and we generally we don't take care of these kind of sections, but it is having a huge impact on the taxpayer. Like, for example, the department was required to serve you the notice electronically. It was given in the law, but they have not served you electronically, but they have served you in any other mode. And you have acted on that show cause notice and you have participated in that proceeding, and you have not raised the objection that sir, you were required to issue the notice electronically and you have not issued it, so it is a invalid notice. And you have not raised this ground, and you have participated in the proceeding based on that notice. So at a later date, you cannot take a plea that the notice has not been served in a proper manner. So it will be deemed to be a proper service of notice. So, sir, if you see in GST law, this service, the term serve or service of notice has been used at various places. But we have section 169, which defines the different modes for service of notice. So let us discuss the different modes of service of notice. First is the personal delivery to the taxable person or through courier. Second is by registered post or speed post or courier with acknowledgement due. Third is communication to his email address. Fourth is making it available on the portal. Fifth is publication in the newspaper. So these are the 5 modes of the mode of service of notice, and there is no preference and there is no sequence which has been prescribed in the law for use of any of the mode, meaning thereby the department can use any of the preference for service of the notice unless until a particular way of service has been prescribed under the GST law. So if notice is not served by any of these modes because it is not practicable, then the department can serve the notice by affixing it in some conspicuous place, that is last known place of business or residence. Or if this is also not possible, then affixing a copy thereof on the notice board of the office of the concerned officer or authority who or which pass such decision or order or should summon or notice. Now the question arises, the department does not resort to service of show cause notice by any of the first 5 prescribed modes, and they have resorted to the delivery or service of notice by affixing copy on the notice board. So whether this service is valid or whether we can challenge the service of this notice and say that first you were required to serve the notice by any of the modes which has been mentioned earlier. So in this case, we have the judgment of Kashi Bartan Bandar, wherein the Honorable Allahabad High Court observed and held as under. The Assistant Commissioner could not come to any conclusion that all previous modes as prescribed under Section 169 are not practicable for service of notice, meaning thereby personal delivery by courier or by email, by uploading on the portal, etc., etc., and has directly resorted to service by affixation. In such a situation, service, if any, by affixation cannot be regarded as proper service. Moreover, nothing on record has been brought to establish the time, date, place, and manner in which service by affixation was resorted to. It has been stated that show cause notice was sent at the email address of the petitioner on 18 January 2018. But again, there is no material to support the said contention. And the sending and receiving of such email has been categorically denied by the petitioner. Thus, the petitioner was not served any SCN. So, basically, the order which has been passed on the basis of this SCN has also been quashed. The another is document identification number. So, sir, we are aware now. If we receive any communication from the department, so in that case, that communication should contain the document identification number. So, in this regard, circular has been issued by the CBIC, and in case of state government, there is the document identification number is not required to be quoted, but it is mandatory in case of central registration. So it has to be quoted in all the communication, including emails sent to taxpayers. And if it is not quoted, then the communication will be treated as invalid and deemed to be never have been issued. So it is very important when you receive any communication from the department, and so you have to check whether that communication contains the DIN or not. And if it contains the DIN, then that DIN should be a valid DIN. Under exceptional circumstances, the communication may be issued without auto-generated DIN. So the circular also specified the specified exceptional circumstances where the communication cannot contain the auto-generated DIN only after recording the reason in writing in the consent file, and also such communication shall expressly state that it has been issued without a DIN. So what are the exception circumstances? The exception circumstances are when there are practical difficulty in generating the electronic DIN, or when communication regarding investigation, inquiry, verification, etc. is required to be issued as short notice or in urgent situation, and the authorized officer is outside the office in discharge of his official duties. So only in these two scenarios, the document can be issued without DIN, and that too only after recording the reason, and such document shall expressly state it does not contain DIN. And if a communication has been issued without DIN, then that communication has to be regularized within 15 days in the specified manner which has been contained in the circular. Now, sometimes the question arises, sir, we have received the show cause notice and the show cause notice also contain the DIN, but we are not aware how to verify that DIN, whether that DIN is valid or whether it is just a number, just a fake number. So, sir, there is a website, government website, which is esanchar.cbic.gov.in, where you can verify the DIN. So this is a screenshot of the screen. You just have to enter the document identification number and then the CAPTCHA, which is given, and click on the submit button. So all the details related to that DIN number will be appeared on your screen, and you can verify whether the DIN has been issued by the proper officer or not, whether it is a valid document or not. Now let us come to some business case studies related to the show cause notice. तो सर अगर हम notices की बात करें तो there are various sections under the GST law which contains the provision related to notices, like scrutiny of returns also contain the provision of notice, then assessment of non-filers of return, in this the notice issued under section 46, then assessment on registered person, then somebody assessment in certain special cases, audit by authorities. If the authorities want to do audit, they have to give me the notice in a specific form. Then special audit, then summons are also issued under inquiry, then demand and recovery. So different kind of notices and show cause notices are being issued to the taxpayer. So if you see under the law, some of the notices are just inquiry notices. They are not alleging that you are required to pay so much tax. They are just making the inquiry. But in case of show cause notice, what happens? The show cause notice is issued after investigation. It is not before investigation. So in the show cause notice, the department alleges that you have not paid so much tax, while so much tax should not be recovered from you. So there is a clear cut allegement in the show cause notice as compared to any other notice which may pertain to just general inquiry under the GST law. So pehla issue can be whether notice under ASMT 10 is SCN. So sir, we are aware that in case of scrutiny of return, the notice is issued under ASMT 10. So whether ASMT 10 is a notice, that is the question. So I have taken one example. There is a taxpayer who has received ASMT 10 under section 61 for difference in ITC claimed as per GST 3B and ITC as appearing in GST 2A. So we all are aware these kind of notices are very regular nowadays when there is a difference in as ITC in GST 3B and GST 2A. So that taxpayer has received the notice under ASMT 10. So whether it is a SCN, and the department can determine the liability to be paid by taxpayer. No, sir, this is not SCN. This is just a inquiry notice, and the department cannot demand any tax from the taxpayer based on this notice. So if we go through this section itself says if notice under ASMT 10 is issued to the taxpayer is required to offer the explanation of the discrepancy, and if the explanation offered is adequate, then no further action will be taken by the department. If the explanation offered is inadequate and the department thinks that the further action needs to be taken, so the department cannot determine any liability by way of ASMT 12. So in that case, the department has to resort to the other options which are available under the GST law. That is, the department can initiate the action under section 65, which is a departmental audit, section 66, special audit, 67, search and seizure, then section 73 and 74, which relate to tax not paid, short paid, fraud or non-fraud cases. So as such, ASMT 10 is just an inquiry notice, and if the department has to do some adjudication, in that case, the department has to take the resort of other provisions which are available under the GST law. The another is direct recovery under section 7512. So there is a section 7512 which says that nothing contained in section 73 of 74, notwithstanding anything contained in section 73 or 74, where any amount of self-assessed tax in accordance with the return furnished under section 39, that is GST 3B, remains unpaid either wholly or partly, or any amount of interest payable on such tax remains unpaid, the same shall be recovered on the provision of section 79. Meaning thereby, if self-assessed tax is not paid as per the return, then the department is not bound to give you any notice under section 73 or 74, and they are not bound to give you any show cause notice under any of the provision of the GST law. They can straightway resort to the recovery provision like attachment of bank account and garnishing proceedings, etc., etc. So recently, by White Finance Act 2021, they have the government has inserted one explanation, and they have defined the word self-assessed tax. And as per the explanation, this self-assessed tax shall include the tax payable in respect of details of outward supplies furnished under section 37, that is GSTR 1, but not included in return furnished under section 39. Meaning thereby, if you have furnished a GSTR 1 and you have shown supply of rupees 100 in GSTR 1, and for that particular one, if you furnish the GSTR 3B and you have shown the supply of rupees 60, so in that case there is a difference of rupees 40, and you have shown the outward supply in GSTR 3B by rupees 40. Now, as per this explanation, this rupees 40 will be treated as self-assessed tax, and the department has the power to recover that tax without going through the procedure of issuing the SCN and straightway resorting to the recovery under section 79. So it is a very harsh provision, and which in my view cannot sustain in the eyes of law, because the principle of natural justice has to be followed. And when the department want to recover any tax from the assessee, the department is duty bound to give the show cause notice, whether it is written in the law or not. So keeping view of these provisions and keeping in mind the different reasons for such differences, like the credit, there was some credit note which the taxpayer forgot to show in GSTR 1, but have shown that credit note in GSTR 3B. So there will be a difference between the outward liability between two returns. Then there can be any reason like a typographical mistake has happened in GSTR1, but that mistake has been corrected in GSTR3. So again, there will be a difference. So, and that too in the law, these kind of errors can be rectified in the subsequent period returns, and that is already provided in the law. So now the question arises, when the correction mechanism which has been already been provided in the law, and the taxpayer can always amend that return, and the government is coming out of such a harsh provision and resorting to the recovery without issuing the show cause notice, so whether it is justified. So sir, in many cases in our clients, I have seen that the department is just issuing the show cause notice in the month where there is more outward liability has been shown in GSTR1 as compared to GSTR3B, and they are ignoring the months where they have shown the more liability in GSTR3B and shown the less liability in GSTR1. So this is the attitude of the department nowadays to issue the show cause notice. Now this is a very glaring issue because lot of issues has been coming due to this reason, because we are human being and mistakes are bound to occur in GSTR1 and 3B. So whether it can be considered as a conclusive proof or evidence for short payment of tax, meaning thereby if there is a difference, there is a more outward liability has been shown in GSTR1 and there is a less outward liability has been shown in GSTR3B. So whether this difference can be considered as a conclusive proof and the department can say that there is short payment of tax, that is the question. So sir, in my view, no. For alleging the non-short payment of tax, the department first have to issue the show cause notice, and merely based on these kind of things, these kind of things and these kind of differences, the department cannot allege that there is a short payment of tax, because there can be many reasons for such differences. So keeping in view all these things, this CBIC has issued instruction number 1 of the 2022 dated 7 January 2022, wherein they said if there is a mismatch between the outward liability declared in GSTR1 and GSTR3B, in that case the department shall issue the communication to seek explanation to the taxpayer, and if the department is satisfied with the reply of the taxable person, in that case they shall drop the proceeding, and if not satisfied, they shall initiate the recovery proceeding. Now indirectly they have issued the show cause notice, because in this CBIC instruction they have used the word communication. So definitely communication is not equivalent to show cause notice, but definitely they also realize that there can be many reasons for the difference, and straightway resorting to the recovery will be against the principle of natural justice. So some communication has to be there, but still whether this communication is sufficient or they have to issue the notice under section 73 or 74, that is again a issue which needs to be debated by the various courts in the time to come. Now come to the practical another practical case studies. This is one of the very glaring issues which is coming nowadays. It is non-availability of ITC in respect of invoices or inward supply not reflecting in GSTR2A for financial year 17-18 and financial year 18-19. Non-compliance of section 16 subsection 2 clause C of the CGST Act. So sir, what is happening? The department is generally allowing the credit to the recipient, to the taxpayer, based on the details of inward supply which are reflecting in GSTR2A. So the department of people are insisting if the credit is not reflected in your GST 2A, in that case, they are going to disallow it and they will not allow that credit to you. First. Second, for disallowing that credit, in many show cause notices I have seen, they are quoting section 16, subsection 2 and clause C, wherein they say, since that particular inward supply is not appearing in your GST 2A, so it appears that the supplier has not paid the tax on that corresponding supply, and that's why the condition which has been contained in section 16 subsection 2 clause C has not been satisfied. So that's why you have to show cause as to why the credit which has not been reflected in GST 2A should not be reversed and demanded from you along with interest and penalty. So this kind of allegations has been made in the show cause notice, and it is very frequent, and in almost every case we are receiving this kind of allegations. So I have just summarized the issue, and I'll be discussing some of the pointers which we can take in replying to such kind of show cause notices. So these pointers are in addition to the pointers which I have discussed earlier in my presentation, like jurisdiction, time bar, invocation of extended period of limitation, etc., etc. So all these pointers will be applicable in these kind of show cause notice also. Now I'll be discussing the specific pointers specific to this particular case. First ground which can be taken by the taxpayer is that there is no direct correlation between the payment of tax by the supplier and reflection of invoice in GSTR 2A. So, sir, we all are aware that our GSTR 1 and GSTR 3B are not linked. So, when GSTR 1 and GSTR 3B are not linked, so we cannot say if for a particular supply which has been shown in GSTR 1, whether the payment has been made in GSTR 3B or not. The first thing. Second, as a recipient, I am also not aware whether tax has been paid on that particular supply or not, because the GSTR 1 is filed on the summary level and I can know the status whether GSTR 1 has been filed or GSTR 3B has been filed or not. But I am not aware whether that particular supply which is appearing in my GSTR 2A has been considered in calculation of tax in GSTR 3B or not. So this can be one reply. Second pointer can be that the reflection of credit in GSTR 2A is not sacrosanct, meaning thereby there may be many other factors due to which the credit may not be reflecting in GSTR 2A. For example, the supplier while filing GSTR 1 has shown the B2B supply as B2C supply. First thing. Second case, the supplier while filing GSTR 1 has quoted the wrong GSTN number of the recipient. So in that case also the particular inward supply will not be reflected in GSTR 2A of the recipient. So these kind of contentions I can raise in the notice. The another contention I can give is the complete mechanism for matching of ITC has been kept in abeyance due to technical glitches prevailing in the GSTN system. Thus, the partial system matching cannot be implemented, meaning thereby, if you see earlier when the GST was introduced, there was a complete matching concept which was envisaged in the GST law. Like there was GSTR 1, then based on GSTR 1, the detail of inward supplies were to be auto-populated to the recipient, and the recipient was required to modify, accept, reject those inward supplies, and based on that, the credit will be allowed to him in GSTR 2. And After that, he was required to file GSTR 3. So all these GSTR 2, 3 was completely automated and complete matching concept was envisaged. But when GST law was implemented and there was so many technical glitches, the government was not able to implement this matching concept in totality. So the question arises when the matching principle has not been implemented. So whether the government can implement this system partially and say you need to reconcile your credit with GST at 2A without any basis or without any legal provision in GST law, because the GST law does not contain any partial matching system. It has to be the full matching system, and which has not been implemented. So in my view, the partial matching system is not sustainable and cannot be implemented. The another justification, insertion of Rule 36 Sub-Rule 4 with effect from 9th October 2019. So first of all, this rule has been implemented from 9th October 2019, and this rule was not applicable for the period prior to this date. So what is Rule 36.4? So Rule 36.4 states that if a particular inward supply is not reflecting in the GSTR 2A, so in that case, the ITC on missing invoices which are not reflecting in GSTR 2A of the recipient can be availed up to a specified percentage, meaning thereby the recipient is allowed to avail the ITC on the missing invoices which are not reflecting in GSTR 2A up to a specified percentage by this rule. So meaning thereby whether the government can allow to avail the ITC under Rule 36 Sub-Rule 4 up to a certain percentage on missing invoices which were not appearing in 2A, when it says that the ITC has to be claimed as per GST 2A, meaning thereby the stand of the government in itself is contradictory. Where at one hand the government says you have to claim the ITC as per 2A, and at the other hand the government says as per Rule 36 Sub-Rule 4 you can claim so much credit on the missing invoices which are not appearing in 2A. So in my view, the stand itself taken by the government is faulty and it is not sustainable in the eyes of law. The another support to my argument is prospective insertion of section clause AA in subsection 2 of section 16 with effect from 1st January 2022. Meaning thereby in this section, the government has said, this section basically states that the credit shall be eligible to the recipient when the details of outward supplies has been furnished by the supplier in his outward return as per section 37. Meaning thereby now they have inserted the clause in section 16 subsection 2 as one of the conditions for eligibility of ITC, that unless the supplier has uploaded the details of outward supply in GSTR 1, the recipient will not be eligible to claim the input tax credit. So sir, now you have inserted this clause prospectively from 1st January 2022. Now for the period, earlier period, financial year 17-18 and 18-19, this clause was not there. And if you say this clause was there earlier also, then what was the need of this insertion of this clause from 1st January 2022? So insertion of this clause in itself proves that earlier the stand taken by the government was faulty and without any legal base. The another ground which we can take is substantive benefit shall not be denied due to fault of the supplier or procedural lapses, because there is no fault on the part of the recipient. So it is a fault on the part of the supplier. So the recipient should not be penalized. There can be a procedural lapses also. Suppose the wrong GSTN number has been mentioned by the supplier while uploading the return. Now the time has been passed and he cannot amend the GSTR 1. So in that case, due to one procedural lapse and mentioning of the wrong GSTR number of the recipient, whether the government will disallow the credit? No, sir, they cannot disallow the credit. So, sir, we have the case of DY Bethel Enterprises also of the Honorable Madras High Court, wherein one of the case has come up to the Honorable High Court, wherein what happened, DY Bethel and Enterprises has purchased certain goods from some supplier, and that supplier has not deposited the tax. The government, while doing the assessment or something of DY Bethel and Enterprises, they said, since the tax has not been deposited by the supplier, you are not eligible for the ITC and you are required to pay the ITC to the, you need to reverse the ITC and pay the applicable GST to the government. Now, in the DY Bethel, they have taken the plea that, sir, we have paid the value of the goods along with the GST to the supplier. So entire money has gone from our pocket. And they have not deposited with the government. And third thing, they have said that, sir, if you want to recover any tax from the supplier, so definitely supplier is at fault. So why don't you issue the notice to the supplier and you are troubling us? So they have also quoted one of the minutes of the GST Council meeting, where it has been held that only in exceptional cases the ITC shall be recovered from the recipient in such cases. And those are the cases where the supplier was not available and not traceable, or etc. etc. So, but it is the ITC cannot be recovered from the recipient in the routine manner. So definitely, as per this judgment, we can conclude that if the department want to recover the ITC or get the ITC reversed by the recipient, first of all, the department has to initiate the recovery proceeding or adjudication proceeding against the defaulting supplier. And if the department cannot succeed against the defaulting supplier, only then he can issue the notice to the recipient. So again, in these kind of notices, the allegation of suppression was also made, and it can be there can be one ground which we can take, that the company has duly declared all the ITC availment in the monthly GSTR 3B and GSTR 9. So there is no requirement to declare the invoice-wise availment of ITC. In the GSTR 3B, we show the ITC at the in totality basis. So when I have shown the ITC as in the return as required, as in the format and as per the law, so there is no question of suppression, and the extended period of limitation cannot be invoked. So this is the first case study which I thought I will be sharing with you. Now let us discuss the second case study, which is also very important. Recovery of canteen services and uniform etc. from employees taxable under GST. Nowadays, what is happening? There are a lot of companies who are having canteen facility at their factory, and they provide the uniform to their employees at free of cost or free of cost, and they also provide the canteen services either at free of cost or subsidized rates. So what is happening? The department is issuing the show cause notices and demanding the tax on the recovery of canteen services or uniform. So in this case, we can take a ground that provision of canteen facility or uniform is part of the company's human resource policy, HR policy, and company is not in a business of supplying canteen services. So basically, providing the canteen services is not a part of business, and it is being provided as per HR policy. provision of subsidized canteen facility by the employer to employee through outside contractor shall not be treated as supply of goods or services. Meaning thereby we can take a ground that no service has been provided by the company because the canteen facility or canteen service or supply of food has been made directly by the canteen contractor to the concerned employee, and as such no service or no service has been provided by the company. The company has only facilitated in the payment to the vendor by recovering the some portion of the cost from the employee and bearing the some part of the cost itself. So as such, facility is not provided, food is not supplied by the company, food is supplied by the canteen contractor to the employee directly. It only part of the cost is recovered from the employee. So that's why it is not a service in the hands of the company. So there further this can be the plea. There shall be a legal intention of the both the parties to contract to supply and receive the goods or services. तो इस केस में मैं तो सर्विस उसकी ले नहीं रहा ना, जो employee directly taking the service. In the absence of such intention, would not amount to supply within the meaning of CGST Act. Then further there is a CBIC press release which says that anything provided by employer to employee in view of the employment policy shall not be considered as supply. So friends, if the department will take this view that the canteen facility which has been provided by the employer to employee will be treated as supply, in that case what will happen? There are so many facilities which has been provided by employer to employee, all these will become taxable. The department may say that there is a air conditioner which is installed in the office and the employee is getting the air. So the value of that fresh air or the air conditioned air should be treated as supply and should be liable to tax. So there can be some other examples also. There can be many facilities, maybe fitness club or other facility which is provided as per the employment policy. So meaning thereby the department will charge tax on everything. So sir, this is not the correct interpretation of the law. All these facilities which are being provided by the employer to employee are the consideration for the employment. And Schedule 3rd specifically says this provision of services by the employee to employer shall not be treated as supply of services. So meaning thereby, when I am providing the consideration for the services provided by the employee to me, and that consideration shall not be treated as supply. Then there are a lot of judicial precedent which supports our view, and some of these are Emcure Pharmaceuticals Limited, AR Maharashtra, then Tata Power Company Limited, etc. You can refer these if you want to go in detail. Then let us come to the another case study, that is non-payment of tax liability on RCM in respect of services of ocean freight in case of CIF import. So sir, there was a glaring issue and there was dispute on this point, and everybody was worried whether we need to charge the RCM in case of purchase of goods on CIF basis. So there were two views. One view was that since we are not recipient of a specified service, because the service has been received by the foreign exporter from the shipping line in case of CIF export, and we are not receiving any service directly from the shipping line. So we are not the recipient. So in that case, the tax shall not be payable under RCM. And the another view was that the tax should be payable under RCM since importer is liable, has been made liable to pay tax under RCM. So this was the litigation issue, and the Honorable Supreme Court in case of Mohit Minerals Private Limited has held that the levy of GST under RCM in case of ocean freight in case of CIF imports as unconstitutional. So it has been declared unconstitutional. So you can accordingly take care. Now the question arises in this is that there will be different scenarios which may be followed by different people. The one scenario can be that you may be paying the tax under RCM on the ocean freight on the and claiming the full input tax credit. So this is a revenue neutral situation. So in my view, you are not required to do anything because there is no loss to you. But there may be a situation that you are paying tax under RCM on ocean freight in case of CIF imports, but the full credit was not available to you because you are engaged in supply of taxable as well as exempted goods or services. So in that case, you were availing only the proportionate credit as per rule 42 or 43 of the CGST rules. So in that case, sir, there is a good case that since this levy has been held as ultra virus, so in this case, there is a good case that we can file the refund and say that since the levy has been declared unconstitutional and ultra virus, so the refund should be allowed. So it is a good case to file for the refund. So friends, I am done with my presentation. So these are the brief case studies which I thought I'll be sharing with you. And I am very thankful to you for the patient hearing. And now I open the floor for the question answer session. Thanks a lot for the patient hearing. Abdullah, we can take the question answer session now?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah.
Should I read out the question? So it is already in the chat box.
Okay, you can read out.
Yeah.
Just wait.
Whether pre-SCN notice is mandatory before issue of SCN under section 73 clause 4 and 73 clause 5. There is a question from Mr. Vijay Kumar Subramanian.
Yeah. Sir, what is happening earlier under rule 142, they have used the word shall, meaning thereby the authorities were mandatorily required to issue the intimation under form DRC 01A. And if they don't issue, the entire proceedings were invalid. And we have some high court judgment also on this, wherein the authorities have not issued the intimation under DRC 01A. In that case, the authorities have quashed the entire proceeding. So, but that word shall has been replaced by may. Now, there is a discretion on the part of the authority to issue intimation under DRC 01A, and they may issue and they may not issue. But in my view, they still have to issue. Reason being, if they don't issue, your legal right is getting impacted. If you see section 74, section 74 says if the taxpayer pays the tax, short paid tax, or the ITC, basically wrong availed ITC before the issue of SCN, in that case, no penalty equivalent to only 15% is to be levied. So how he'll come to know how much amount he is required to pay? Because unless until department issues the intimation, he is not aware he is required to pay some amount. So sir, practically if you go by the law, yes, they have the discretion to issue, but for all practical purposes, in my view, they have to issue it, and otherwise it will be open to litigation in future. Yeah, Abdullah, next question.
And next question is from Mr. Rajesh. Rajesh is asking, notice is received under section 62, returns filed after 30 days, all taxes, interest and late fee paid, but liabilities still standing in the portal in other than written liabilities. Officer says pay again and file appeal. And he's asking what is the way out?
Liability, when you have paid the late fees and the tax, so liability should disappear. So maybe it can be some portal issue when you have paid all the liabilities. So you can just file the appeal or get it corrected, I think.
I think the officer is asking to pay liabilities again, or he already paid the liability, but it's still showing that may be the issue.
Sir, when you have already paid, so it is a system issue. So you don't have to pay it again. You have to file the appeal and say that there is a fault in your system. We are not responsible. You can raise the grievance also.
Yes.
You can raise the grievance on the GST portal.
All right. And next question is from Mr. Belram Begari. The officer has raised a query stating that the reason for cancellation of GST registration was not found available at the time of visit. The officer has raised, actually the officer mistakenly visited the old principal place. Instead on new address has been approved in core amendment. So what about interest on, yeah, or I don't know, he has not finished the question. Mr. Beldam is available in live. You can ask in the chat box. I'm skipping the question for the time being. And I'm taking another question. So what we can do is we can give some of speaking permission to few people if they want, with your permission.
Yeah.
Yeah. If someone want to ask a question directly on live, please raise your hands. I'll give you the speaking access. Yes, Mr. Ragesh Babu want to ask you. Ragesh, you can ask now. You can unmute.
Yes,
you can ask.
हेलो.
Yes, sir.
आवाज आ रही है सर मेरी?
Yeah, you are audible.
सर मैं ये कह रहा था, मैं तो एक तो मेरी इंग्लिश ज्यादा बढ़िया नहीं सर, हिंदी में ही बात करना चाहूंगा.
So not an issue, sir. We are speaking in English because the participants are.
ना मैंने अपनी बात कही है सर, बिल्कुल सही कह रहे हैं सर. तो मैं अपना एक्चुअली ज्यादा अच्छा अपनी बात को बता पाऊंगा हिंदी में, इसलिए कह रहा हूँ सर कि एक तरफ तो हम बात करते हैं कि सर विथल वगैरह जो जजमेंट अभी आपने सब बताए थे हमें सामने है कि अगर सामने वाला सप्लायर जो अगर जमा भी नहीं करे टैक्स, फिर भी हमें उसका क्रेडिट मिलना चाहिए. ठीक है सर. दूसरी तरफ जो 29 दिसंबर 2021 का जो नोटिफिकेशन है, नोटिफिकेशन नंबर 40/2021, उसमें रूल्स में जो चेंज किए हैं और रूल 36 में चेंज करके उन्होंने कर दिया कि अगले महीने के 11 तारीख तक जो 2B में इनवॉइस दिखाई देगा वहीं तक की आईटीसी हमें केवल मिलेगी. पहली बात तो यह है कि ये रूल्स में अमेंडमेंट किया है. एक्ट तो हमारा कहता है कि आईटीसी मिल जाएगी, जैसी हमारे सप्लाई मिल जाए, जो कंडीशन चारों फुलफिल कर लेंगे हमें मिल जाएगा. रूल यह कह रहे हैं कि नहीं साहब, आप 11 तारीख तक जितना आपके इनवॉइस दिखेंगे उतने तक ही आईटीसी मिलेगी. तो ये कॉन्ट्राडिक्शन नहीं
सर मैं आपको सॉरी इंटरप्ट करना चाहूंगा. मेरी कंडीशन 5 वो 4 नहीं है, 5 है. जो क्लॉज मैंने डिस्कस करा था सेक्शन 16 सब क्लॉज, वो सेक्शन 16 सबसेक्शन 2 क्लॉज AA. This clause has been inserted with effect of 1st January 2022. So as per this clause, the supplier should have uploaded the details of outward supply in their GSTR 1. So this is squarely applicable from 1st January 2022. तो जो हम बात कर रहे थे कि वो दिख नहीं रही है तब भी मिलेगा, that was for the earlier period.
मैंने बात मान ली सर. मैं कह रहा हूँ ये गलत नहीं है कि एक तरफ तो कोर्ट कहती है कि पैसा जमा पीछे वाले नहीं भी किया हो तो भी आईटीसी मिलेगी, हमें अपलोड करने की बात नहीं, पैसा जमा भी नहीं किया हो.
सर मैं आपकी बात समझ गया.
सर GSTR 1 में डिटेल्स अपलोड नहीं की हो वो तो एक बात की बात है, पहले टैक्स जमा नहीं किया हो तो भी हमें आईटीसी मिलेगी. दूसरी ओर कह रहे हैं कि साहब 11 तारीख तक अगर जमा अपलोड नहीं करते हैं, सिंपली जमा तो कर दिया, अपलोड नहीं किया, तो ये अमेंडमेंट क्या गलत नहीं है सर? इसको चैलेंज नहीं किया जाना चाहिए सर?
सर देखिए राकेश जी, देखिए सर गवर्नमेंट का काम है लॉ बनाना.
जी सर.
और कोर्ट का काम है लॉ को इंटरप्रेट करना.
और हम लोगों का सर,
ठीक है सर, वी असिस्ट द कोर्ट्स इन इंटरप्रेटिंग द लॉ करेक्टली. तो सर व्हाट इज
लेकिन सर सामने हम लोग नहीं रखेंगे, एसएससी तो इतना नहीं रख पाता इन चीजों को।
Please confine one question only, because there are a lot of people are.
सॉरी सर, मैं दूसरी साथ में जुड़ी हुई बात यही है कि सपोज अब मेरा ठीक है 11 तारीख तक उन्होंने टैक्स ये इनवॉइस अपलोड नहीं किया, 2 दिन बाद किया, और मैंने रिटर्न फाइल नहीं किया अभी तक। मैं 2 दिन की लेट फीस जमा करूं, अब 2 दिन बाद मुझे वो ये हो रहा है, उसमें 2B में रिफ्लेक्ट हो रहा है, तो क्या मैं इधर की ब्याज जमा करा के आईटीसी लेते हुए रिटर्न फाइल कर सकता हूं?
सर आप कर दीजिए ना, उसमें कोई बात नहीं, वो ठीक है, देगा, यू विल रिप्लाई। अब्दुल्ला सर मेरे ख्याल आगे चलते हैं।
Sorry, sir.
मेरे ख्याल रीड कर लेते हैं, अदरवाइज इट विल टेक लॉट ऑफ टाइम।
Yeah. That would be fine. Yeah, I'm not giving any access.
क्योंकि अदरवाइज क्या है कि आई एम रिसीविंग द इन द चैट बॉक्स कि पीपल आर सेइंग दे आर नॉट गेटिंग चांस।
Yeah. All right, sir. You can take it the question whether it is relevant.
Just guide me where to take. I'll also read out.
Yeah, it's in the chat box. There's a chat in front of you in the bottom.
Should I start from the end or beginning?
Like you can end. You can take.
And just read. एक क्वेश्चन आया, Abdullah, you can read. I think that will be more convenient. इसमें change होगा।
Bottom. There is one question from Ms. Prince Nanda. Sir, interest applicable if I discharge my liability declared in GST 1 under head CGST and STST for the month of December 2019 and have the half credit balance in my CGST ledger.
Sir, देखिए, the liability of that particular month has to be declared. If the invoice of a particular month has been declared late in any of the subsequent month, then the benefit of ITC available and CGST ledger is not available. So if you see, read the proviso carefully under section 50. So if some supply or some invoice which was required to be declared in earlier month has been declared in subsequent month, so in that case the benefit of ITC available in ledger is not available as per that proviso.
All right, and next question from Mr. Saurav Chowdhury. He's asking if he have not uploaded B2B CN invoices in 2017 and 2018. And now department is demanding the same from us and they are saying recipient has availed the ITC. How to fight in this case?
Basically, the question which I understand earlier, they have shown it B2C. They have not shown is B2B.
Correct.
And now the department is asking to reverse the ITC.
I think yes.
So sir, in this case, what is happening practically, I'll tell you, in one of the case where the departmental audit was going on in our client. So we were able to convince the department based on the certificate which we have received from the supplier. In that case, we got the certificate from the supplier that supplier has issued us these invoices, and they have duly paid the tax under GSTR 3B and they have duly filed the return, but due to mistake, they have not shown this supply properly, maybe wrong GSTR number mentioned, or they have shown it the B2C supply in their GSTR 1. So on that basis, the department has allowed us the credit. So you have to create some document and submit to the department so that they can take the cognizance of that document. And you can also give the undertaking if this is false, will be liable to pay the tax along with interest.
All right. Yeah. There is another question from Mr. Jagdish Solanki. He's asking taxpayer under composition scheme and up to December 2021 sales turnover cross limit of rupees 1.5 crore. Due to some problem, taxpayer cannot able to track record of sales and it came came to know a cross turnover in June 2022 that sales in cross threshold limit. He has filed pending CMP 08 GST return up to December 2021. Now GST portal does
I
not.
think this I think this is not related to the show cause notice. Let's take the question related to the show cause notice.
I think there is no other question. Like there is one more question from Mr. Balram Begari. The officer has raised a query stating that the reason for cancellation of GST registration was not found available at the time of visit. Actually, the officer mistakenly visited old principal place instead of new address has been approved in core amendment. I don't understand actually. He's still not.
I think I understand. But if you have the new principal place of business and you have updated in the RC, so definitely you can take a plea and file the reply, sir. Our principal place of business was changed and it was updated. So you are requested to visit the new place and kindly kindly revoke the cancellation. So I think it is a valid plea and you can give, and I think there shall not be an issue.
Yeah. I think there is no other questions in the chat box. If someone wants to ask any question to Mr. Chitresh Gupta, please type it in the chat box. We're happy to take the question. There's one question like if officer asking justification of residence place as an office, so what should I answer?
Pardon, can you repeat?
If officer asking justification of a residence place as an office, so what should he answer?
I think this is not a valid question. You can have the office at residence also. Like in case of advocates and chartered accountant, they have the one office at residence place.
Even
and
in fact, if people are working from work from home, there is no point of.
And in many cases, I have seen in my experience, the first registered office of the company is always registered on some of the director residence. So I think this is the issue which is more concerned to the house tax department, because you cannot carry out the commercial activity from the residence. So I think this is the issue concerning commercial department, and they should not be concerned about this as far as valid proof has been given by you. So I think there is no issue.
Yes. Before going to next question, I'm just announcing about his book, GST Law Analysis and Procedure. Link is available in the chat box. Now there is 30% discount is available in ShopScan website. It's shopscan.in. I'm just posting the link again in the chat box. If you are interested, please go and buy. Shilpi Gupta will be moderating further. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, Shilpi, go ahead.
Yeah, so basically what I'll be doing is I'll be moderating on the questions which have been asked by the participants, and you can reply on the same.
Not an issue, ma'am.
So the first question by Mr. Dharmesh Taylor is that the department is issuing ASMT 10, DRC 01A intimation, DRC 01A SCN, DRC 07. So what is the difference between all of them?
So these are different. These are issued under different sections. Like we have discussed one case study of ASMT 10. ASMT 10 is for scrutiny of return under section 61. So when they want to do the scrutiny of return and they have some discrepancy found on the basis of information furnished by the taxpayer, they issue the ASMT 10. And if they are issuing the notice under section 73 or 74, so before issuing the notice, they give you the intimation in DRC 01A, and they issue the notice under DRC 01. So under different section, different forms are being prescribed. So depending on the section they are invoking, they issue the form, they use the form.
Right. Mr. Puneet Kumar is asking what should be the fate of the notice, or how should SSC should react if the notice is sent through mail, but it does not carry the the document identification number or DIN?
So, if you receive the notice from the department over email, so first of all, what we have discussed in the presentation, you have to check that whether it is actually a show call notice or it is just a inquiry from the department side, and under which section they have issued that notice, or it is a communication. So unless until you are aware that under which section the department has sent this email, you cannot reply to that.
Right.
So further to add this, even if you have seen in my presentation, I have mentioned that even the email communication should have the DIN. So you can always say, sir, DIN is not mentioned, you are requested to provide the DIN, and only then we can reply to your email. But it may be noted that, as I have discussed under section 169, email is one of the proper mode of service, and unless until a specific mode has been prescribed under some section or rule, so email is a valid service.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So CA AN Singla is inquiring that whether DIN is also applicable on state GST, because CBIC circular, there is a lot, it is also being seen that a lot of state GST communication, the DIN is not available. So is CBIC circular also applicable on state GST?
No, CBIC circular is not applicable on state authorities. If some state has issued their own circular for the DIN, then that will apply. Otherwise, CBIC circular is not applicable. It is not applicable, basically.
Mr. Dharmesh Taylor is saying that the DIN verification is actually completely vague. The officer can generate the single DIN number and use it for serving 100 notices to different taxpayers. Mr. Taylor, I think this is not correct. So,
to some extent, you can say, because when you see, I don't think the SSC name is coming. When you verify the DIN, I don't think SSC name also comes. So I think this needs to be checked. But definitely, you may be right, because I have not seen the SSC name in whose case they have issued the DIN. So I think this needs to be checked when we verify the detail, whether name of the SSC appears or not.
CA Shivram has also asked this question that there are various state officers who are giving notices in portal without DIN, whether it is valid or not. So I think that sir has already replied that for state authorities, there are certain sections where DIN is, they are not using DIN. So it needs to be seen.
Yeah.
The next question is, this is a case which they have given that the case is for financial year 18-19. In March 2019, our supplier has filed nil GSTR1. However, he has deposited tax on our supply in his GSTR 3B. He has not amended GSTR1 till date, till September 2019. As per the comparison chart, as well as while we were checking our GSTR 1 and 3B, that is, they were making the reconciliation, it is clear that he has paid the tax, but he has not correctly filed GSTR 1. Now the department is demanding tax while conducting GST audit. Is it correct? And what should be the remedy for the same?
I think this is totally absurd, and department should not be demanding tax. And a lot of pointers I have given in the presentation while discussing the case study. And again, I have explained that in this case, what you can get, you can get the certificate from the supplier. In that certificate, they can write that we have supplied good against these invoices. They can make the table and paste the table in the certificate. Again, these and these invoices, and these invoices has been properly shown in GST 3B, while we have wrongly submitted the GST 1 as nil. So that's why it is not appearing in GST 2A. And in case there is any liability, we should be held liable for the same. So I think if you give this kind of certificate, generally the authorities are accepting and they will allow you the credit.
Correct. And also, since there is no revenue loss in this case.
Yes.
Now,
but definitely definitely the government want the laddu in both the ends.
Right.
They want the tax from the supplier also and the recipient also.
Mr. Vijay Kumar wants to know that whether section 16(2) AA has already been notified.
Yes, it has been notified from 1st January 2022.
Perfect. Okay. I'm coming to another question. What procedure is to be followed by the department subsequent to the issue of form GST 0IA? What is, I think it is
1A. I think DRC 01A. This is the intimation.
okay. So I think they have, Mr. Mahesh has asked it, what is the procedure which is followed by the department?
Yes, the procedure is that first of all, they will issue you the intimation in form DRC 01A, and they were in that they were alleged that you have not paid so much tax, or you have done this, you have done this. So you have to go through that intimation, and you have two options available. First of all, you can accept that this much tax is payable and we are paying. The second option available to you is you deny all the allegation which has been made in DRC 01A. If you deny the allegation which has been made in DRC 01A, in that case, they will be going to issue you a show cause notice in DRC 01, and normal adjudication proceeding will start after issue of show cause notice, and after adjudication of show cause notice, they will be showing you the final order. And if you accept the allegation and if you pay the demand which has been given in the DRC 01A, then matter ends and they will not issue the show cause notice. Okay. I think I have replied.
Yeah. Mr. Prince Nanda, your interest question at 532 is not clearly understandable. So you need to send another question with respect to this. Mr. Mariam Athu has asked that whether we have to pay interest at the rate of 24% for wrong availment of ITC as per section 50 subsection 3, or can 18% be paid for ITC available but not utilized?
If ITC was available and not utilized, so in my view, no interest is paid, because as far as section 50 subsection 1 is concerned, it says when the person was liable to pay tax but fails to pay that tax within the due date, so there has to be a failure. When you avail the ITC and you have not utilized, so there is no failure to pay tax, first thing. So section 50 subsection 1 is not applicable. And if you go to section 50 subsection 2, it talks about the availment of ITC, wrong availment of ITC as per section 42 and 43. So section 42 and for section 43 has not been implemented till date because complete matching concept has not been brought into force. So as far as section 50 subsection 2 is concerned, that section is not applicable as on date because the provisions of matching are kept in abeyance. So at the most you can go to section 50 subsection 1, and that too when the taxpayer is failed to pay tax, then interest can be charged. But in case of ITC availed but not utilized, there is no failure to pay tax. So in my view, no interest should be payable.
So I'm again taking this question of Mr. Saurav Chaudhary. Actually, the case is like this, that assessee has the supplier has not uploaded their outward supplies, which is B2B and credit note invoices of 17-18. Now the department is telling them that since the recipient has already availed the ITC on this, you should be paying tax. So the department is asking the supplier to pay tax because the recipient has already availed the ITC. Now, in this case, what should be the remedy on the part of supplier?
Supplier should have already paid the tax, because when the supplier has filed their GST 3B, so they have already paid the tax. The mistake they have committed in GST 1 only, na?
Right. So, Mr. Saurav Chaudhary, I would like to state that in this case, first of all, you need to understand whether it is a genuine supply or not. If there is a genuine outward supply which has not been recorded and where tax has not been paid, then the supplier has to pay the tax along with interest.
Yeah.
And in case it is not a genuine supply, then they should say that there is no supply at all.
Yeah.
So Mr. Balram Begari has asked a question. The officer has raised a query stating that the reason for cancellation of registration was that the address was not available at the time of the physical verification. However, officer has actually visited the old principal place and not the new one.
Now the question is, I think this question is coming again and again. Now the question is whether that new address was updated in the RC. But when new address was updated in the RC, so he should have visited the new place.
Yes,
So when
yes.
he should have visited the new place, so it is fine and there is no issue. And I think why they have visited the old address, that is the question.
Right.
From where they got it actually.
Right, right. Mr. Bhavesh Shah has asked a question on RCM applicability for payments made to municipal corporation. I think this is outside the purview of this webinar. So we can actually skip it because we have a couple of more questions.
Yeah.
Mr. Shobit Thapa has also written in the chat box whether SCN for general penalty can be imposed under section 125 for late filing of GSTR 3B.
In my view, yes. There is a circular which has been issued by the CBIC, and they say that apart from the late fees, if the officer want to impose the penalty, they can impose under section 125. But till date, they are not doing. But definitely, department is aware of this, and I have a discussion with few of the commissioners, and they are saying that they are going to invoke section 125 even in case of late filing of GSTR 3B.
So this is a question with respect to ocean freight. They are saying now since it has been declared as unconstitutional by Honorable Supreme Court. So whatever tax which we have paid on this, even if we are claiming ITC, can we actually go for the refund?
What is the benefit? Because it is already tax neutral. You must have claimed the ITC and utilize it. If there is a credit accumulation, so definitely you can think of refund. But if there is no credit accumulation and you were able to set up the ITC of ocean freight, so then why you want to go in refund?
Right, right. Mr. Pramod is asking that a single DIN is issued to multiple notices. What should the taxpayer do? We have already replied on this.
Yeah.
Mr. Maria Muthu is asking that the department asking for 24% of interest for wrong availment of ITC, but ITC not utilized. Whether we have to pay, I think this also has been
replied and we have a very strong case. So we don't have to pay 24% interest.
There is another question from Sumit. He's saying how to reply for notices raised under ASMT 10.
Okay, basically the notices which are coming under ASMT 10 is based on the returns which has already been furnished by the taxable person. So based on the return and the information already available on the GST portal, they carry out some kind of reconciliation. Like I have mentioned in my case study, that there was a difference between ITC as claimed as per GST 3B and ITC available in GST 2A. So these and they give the notice, sir, there is a difference between ITC. So you should be explaining the difference. So definitely it is a factual notice. First of all, we should try to explain the difference with providing them the reconciliation and the valid reason. And if we are able to provide the valid reason and the justification, the matter ends. And if we are not able to provide the valid reason, so definitely they will issue the notice under section 73 or 74, and then we have to go through the entire adjudication process.
Mr. Prakash Kodiali is asking about a taxation effected retrospectively in respect of solar power generating system. So you need to be clear exactly whether this is in the scope of this particular presentation or not. So you have to give the background before Chitresh would be able to answer this question. Mr. Balram, with respect to your registration issue, if you need some expert guidance, I think TaxScan team can actually provide you with the details of how to contact Chitresh Gupta ji, and you can do that. I think offline discussion will be a better option in this case. Jitendra Patkar is saying, is penalty applicable after issuance of show cause notice under 74? And can that be challenged?
Section 74 itself contains the various clauses related to penalty. Like this, in section 74, it says that if you pay the tax before issuance of show cause notice, there will be 15% penalty. If you pay the tax along with interest after within 30 days after the service of notice, then the penalty will be 25%. Then if you pay it after the order, then it will be 50%. Within 30 days after the order, it will be 50%. Then after that, it will be 100%. So the section itself contains the complete mechanism for penalty. So if you have received the notice under section 74, so definitely the penalty which has been prescribed under section 74 will be levied as applicable.
Right, sir. Mr. Guru Swami is asking, is there any relaxation in 180 days limit during COVID lockdown period? If interest is demanded, can it be challenged on the principle of natural justice? What is this relaxation of 180 days?
I understand payment to supplier within 180 days.
Right.
I think. So I think there is no relaxation in this payment to supplier within 180 days. But in my view, there has to be a failure to pay. This section says if the recipient fails to pay to the supplier within 180 days from the date of issue of invoice, so there has to be a failure to pay. So suppose if I have an agreement with the supplier that I will be making the payment within 2 years or after 2 years, so can it still be said there is a failure on my part to pay the consideration along with tax within 180 days when my contract provided otherwise? So in my view, no. So there is no failure because the contract in itself says the consideration along with tax will be paid after the expiry of 2 years. So yes, it is a disputable issue and the department can say definitely the provisions are attractive, but in my view, it is not sustainable.
Right. Mr. Rajendran, your query with respect to issue your audit and scrutiny and mismatch of ITR return is not really clear. So you need to write again your query and just post it to us so that we can reply. Mr. Mahesh is asking, objections filed against notices issued under 73-74 has to be taken into consideration and a speaking order has to be passed by the proper officer in spite of the consideration to reply to DRC 01A. I think that is there as per law.
You have to give the reply to the show cause notice, detailed reply, and after considering the submission, they have to pass the speaking order and they have to deal with each and every submission which you have raised in your reply.
Right.
So that's, yes, there has to be a speaking order. If it is not a speaking order and if they have passed the order without considering your reply, then in that case, the order is not a valid order.
One of the question by Mr. Prince Nanda is that AOA has passed an ex-parte assessment order of for 17-18. But there is no such information on my GST portal. What to do now? They are saying you have to go to appeal. I think appellate is the only way out, but you can mention that in your appeal. Correct, sir?
Yes, you have to go to the section 62, I believe, the best judgment assessment or something. The process which is given in that section, you need to follow that. Because why they have cancelled it or why they have done it, so that it needs to be seen under which section they have done it.
Mr. Heather Wali advocate is saying that in the cases reported under 54 AP STJ, And also he has quoted a Supreme Court judgment. It has been held that the assessing authorities have to furnish the entire material on which they have relied upon in the show cause notice to the party in compliance with the natural justice. This needs to be noted. Yes, it is there. So it is quite noted, and it was a part of our presentation also.
Yeah.
Time limit to issue SCN if ASMT 10 is issued from the date of ASMT 12 or as prescribed under 73 or 74.
So this is both the provision are totally different. Section 61 which deals with the scrutiny of return is an independent provision, and section 73 and 74 are independent provision. So once the proceedings are going on under section 61, so what is written in the section 61 will apply, and the time limit which are given under section 73 or 74 shall not apply.
Sir, this is the one of the last questions. Jitendra Patkar is asking, how can the department ask me to reverse the ITC if it is shown in the GSTR 1, but GSTR 3B has not been filed? So can't we challenge that my purchase can be offsetted against his ITC credit?
So this is the law, and you will appreciate that under the law in section 16 subsection 2 clause C clearly says the tax in respect of supply should have been paid by the supplier. Only after that you can only after that the recipient can claim the credit. So definitely we cannot say that the supplier has not paid the tax, still we are eligible. So yes, this is a disputable issue, and a lot of litigation is going to come on this particular issue. So like I have already discussed the case of DY Bethel, where the recipient has paid the value of supply along with tax to the supplier, but supplier has not deposited. So this is one of the judgment, and many judgments are will be coming in the due course. But definitely it is the law, and now the court need to take the call what to do in these cases.
So the last question, Sachin Bubna has asked that assessee has missed to report closing stock mistakenly in June 17 VAT annual return. Tran 1 credit has been taken. Now department has issued notice under section 74 to reverse Tran 1 with 100% penalty. Mr. Bubna, I think the question does not have the complete information to reply on this, and this is a specific issue with respect to Tran 1 credit. So we need to see it specifically and then discuss. So it can be discussed offline, but we need complete information. So with this, I think we can easily close the Q&A session. Over to you, Abdullah. Thank you so much, Chitreshi, for...
Thank you, ma'am.
I think we can wind up the session now. It's already been 6:13. We are running 30 minutes more. Thank you so much, Chitresh Gupta ji and Shilpi Gupta. It's been a fantastic session. I'm getting a lot of messages about the feedback of the session. It's been great, and thank you so much all the participants, and thank you so much.
Thank you everybody for the patient hearing, and thank you TechScan for inviting and organizing such a wonderful session. Thank you, Abdullah.
Thank you so much.